I don't think Notre Dame got snubbed out of a playoff spot. If we were to look at the pool of teams that were eligible to make those at-large spots, Miami had the best justification because they beat you on a football field. That game could have been a year ago, but if it was in the context of the entire season, say for whatever weird reason, a year ago still would be the 2025 season, it's still within the context of that season. You have to honor it. Did the College Football Playoff Committee get it right? That is the question that people are asking. Did they do the right thing? I think that they were in a very difficult position. I think everyone understands that their job is to pick the college football playoff at large spots. And in this case, with 2025, they also had to pick what top 5 champions they wanted to put in, although that decision was already made. If Duke was to win the ACC, to which they did, they were not going to make the playoff. They didn't even have their team set up. Manny Diaz gave him the day off, and he was like, yeah, you guys can stay ready, but it's not going to happen. I got 5 takeaways for everyone to talk about, right? Let's talk about the elephant in the room with the college football playoff that everyone's going to want to talk about with Miami and Notre Dame. What the College Football Playoff Committee did was the right thing. They did the right thing for honoring the head-to-head matchup and avoiding setting a precedent that what is played on a football field does not matter, that the eye test reigns supreme, even though if you go on the College Football Playoff Committee's website, that's not a criteria. That's not a real thing that we're talking about. You have to respect the head-to-head at the end of the day. Their execution of it was god-awful. I am of the idea, and I thought about this last night, and I tweeted it out, that the College Football Playoff Committee should not do a weekly ranking and try to explain and justify the top 25 teams. Frankly, I think they're better off just doing one finalized ranking at the end of the year and picking the 12 teams. Because the fact that we had Notre Dame in front of Miami for the entirety of this entire season, and it wasn't like they were a mile gap away from each other, and we waited till the very end to put one in front of the other and then honor head-to-head is stupid. It puts the Fighting Irish in a terrible spot, to which they have reacted and opted out of playing any bowl game. Any invitation you send out to the Fighting Irish, it's going to get returned. It's going to get blocked. You're not getting them to play in a bowl game, which, by the way, side piece, it is the softest thing to decline playing a bowl game as a program, especially the Fighting Irish. Taking your ball and going home is Charmin ultra soft. It's one thing to expect like Jeremiah Love and a lot of the talented players that are going to be playing on Sundays for the NFL draft. Do I love that those guys are opting out of bowl games and bowl games have lost 90% of their meaning? Yeah, I hate it, but I understand why. Millions of dollars are on the line. It is what it is. But organizations to just say, yeah, we're not going to do this because you snubbed us out of the playoff, which frankly, I don't think that they got snubbed. I don't think Notre Dame got snubbed out of a playoff spot. If we were to look at the pool of teams that were eligible to make those at-large spots, Miami had the best justification because they beat you on a football field. That game could have been a year ago, but if it was in the context of the entire season, say for whatever weird reason, a year ago still would be the 2025 season, it's still within the context of that season. You have to honor it. You can't just have your feelings of, oh, well, I feel like Notre Dame is a better team. Guess what? I feel like if they rematched right now, I'm picking the Fighting Irish comfortably. That doesn't matter because a game was played and you have to move forward with that. And the College Football Committee did the right thing, but their execution was god-awful. You just go week after week after week putting one team in front of the other, and then you pull the rug underneath them. That puts, the entire organization of Notre Dame in a terrible spot. The team now gets the rug pulled underneath them. I would understand why they feel bitter. Now, would I accept the excuse of, yeah, we're not going to play in a college football playoff or college football bowl game? No, I'm not accepting that. I even see Kansas State have a players-only meeting saying, yeah, we're not gonna be in a bowl game. We don't want to play it. What are we doing? That's soft. But to round out the point on this, because I think people in college football overcomplicated this. I really do. I talked about it on my TikTok. I talked about it time and time again. This entire weekend was pretty straightforward. You had the Big Ten championship. That wasn't really going to matter for the seeding at the very top. The SEC, neither of those teams were going to be out of the playoff, regardless of what was going to happen. Georgia was a lock in their end. Alabama, even though people really pushed for Alabama to be out of the playoff because of their performance in Atlanta, they were never going to miss the playoff. You have to understand that. I will spell it out for you in the most simple way possible. You are not going to punish a team for getting a reward. Going to your conference championship should be seen as a reward. It shouldn't be seen as a punishment, because if you ask Alabama and say, hey, listen, you can go play for a first round bye, but you're also risking missing the playoffs entirely if you were to lose this game, they wouldn't play it. Because going into the weekend, they were in the playoff, and if they had played the game and lost and then they're out, there's no point in playing the game. The risk isn't worth the reward. So when we look at Alabama, they were never going to be out. I'm sorry. If you were to immediately rebuttal with, well, BYU got punished, can we be honest? Can we be so for real right now? Like, can we be transparent? If you believe that the SEC and the Big 12 champions or the championships are on the same eye level and have the same weight and have the same level of stakes, I mean, truly, you can kick BYU to the curb. And Alabama, if you kick them to the curb, the SEC will burn this entire playoff to the ground. Alabama was the number one seed going into this against Georgia. They were never going to leave. Now, whether or not you believe that's justified, whether or not you believe that is fair, that's up for a conversation. But it was never going to happen. And I don't think it is an egregious decision to put Alabama. You know, frankly, I was surprised that they stayed in the same spot, but where else were they going to go? But I have multiple takeaways from this. It's not just the Notre Dame Miami thing, because that's what everyone is going to talk about. I do think Bama staying there is completely valid. I was a little bit surprised. Frankly, I was a little bit surprised that Ohio State stayed at number 2 or dropped down and flipped with Indiana. And that's mainly for the fact that I felt like with Ohio State, when we did our preview, and we'll talk about it when we break down the Big Ten championship. Yeah, they played Texas, but their schedule comparative to Georgia, who is now also a one-loss team. If we're comparing one-loss teams, Georgia had a much more impressive resume. They beat down on the one team they lost to. And sure, the one loss that Ohio State got was in the bonus round. I understand that. They didn't lose a single regular season game, but they avoided all the good teams. They played one Texas team that was not a playoff team in the first week of the season, got to moonwalk their way to go play Michigan, who was a ranked team. I'll give them credit there, and it was on the road. But their best win was either that Texas win at the beginning of the year or Michigan, whereas Georgia had to play a gauntlet of teams. They as well beat Texas in more impressive fashion. And then their one loss that was at home, I understand it was a regular season spot, they avenged that loss in dominant fashion. Frankly, I believe Georgia should have been the second seed pretty comfortably. I was a little shocked to see that. The biggest winners of this college football playoff, as of right now, before the games have even been played, is Oregon. That 5 seed, you could make an argument, is better than having a bye. I mean, truly, I understand it is a very limited sample size when we're talking about just one example of all the teams that had a first round bye lost last year. I know a lot of people are going to talk about that. You throw in the context that we are seeding it in a completely different way. Like, we're not having group of 5 teams having a first round bye like Boise State last year. But there is something to be said about having momentum. And the way that you're going to have a tune-up game against JMU, who you are favored by 21.5 points at home in a night spot, which, why did they get the night game? That's not the point. Oregon now stands at the 5 seed. They get to play JMU at home. Then their next matchup is the weakest of the top 4, which is nothing against Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a dangerous team, and they have a very clear path to making a national championship. But they're also a team that we'll talk about, I don't believe has played a single roster that has been at eye level to their talent roster. And it's very interesting when a team reacts to that. Best example is Ohio State and Indiana. Now, Ohio State has had experience with a talent roster being eye level with the first game of the season, and they didn't dominate Texas at home. We saw the offense struggle a little bit when those talent rosters were at eye level. I'll be very curious if Texas Tech, when they do eventually play Oregon, how are they going to react to that? Sorry, I saw a funny comment. Oregon is in like the most advantageous spot out of everyone. That is the dream spot, is that 5 seed. And they have the clearest path to getting to a semifinal. Like truly, you could not ask for a better spot if you're Oregon. I would say the biggest losers outside of the teams that missed the college football playoff in these conversations, A&M got put in a really tough spot. That is mainly for the fact that because they lost to Texas, it was the final game of the season. It was the last data point, last thing that the committee saw. They were ranked way below Oregon and Ole Miss. Now, I would make the argument based on the criteria set by the committee, A&M by most metrics should be in front of an Ole Miss, should be in front of an Oregon. But I understand this is a reactionary world. They are going to be dropped because the last time you saw Texas A&M play football, because of the notion of what their schedule is and how they looked against Texas, they're going to drop significantly. But that drop is the difference between going and playing Tulane in a home playoff game. Now Texas A&M is going to be facing off against Miami in a home playoff game, then have to go play Ohio State. Now, by no means am I saying that I would rather play Georgia right now, who's playing some of their best football. But the difference between playing a Tulane talent roster and being favored by multiple touchdowns and now being favored by 4 points against a very talented Miami team is a sky is blue statement. Like, obviously, I would rather be the 6th seed in that spot. I think A&M got put in a really tough position. Now, on the bright side, if they do get past Miami, they will play in the Cotton Bowl in Arlington, Texas. There's going to be a lot of Aggies there. Problem being, Ohio State fans do tend to travel quite well. So I would say out of like the at-large teams, I would say the ones that I think had the toughest draw was Texas A&M. The most favorable one has to be Oregon. I mean, Oregon got the dream spot at that 5 seed.